Thomas hurried down the wet London street. His black leather shoes made sharp sounds on the pavement. Rain had just stopped falling, and the streets were shiny and slippery. Thomas wore an expensive dark blue suit and carried a leather briefcase. He looked at his gold watch and frowned. He was already 10 minutes late for his business meeting at 28 years old. Thomas was very successful. He owned a technology company that made computer programs. His company was worth millions of pounds. He lived in a big house in the best part of London. He drove a fancy car and ate at the most expensive restaurants. Thomas had everything that money could buy. But today, Thomas was stressed. This meeting was very important. If it went well, his company would make even more money. If it went badly, he might lose a big contract. Thomas walked faster, thinking about what he would say to the important clients waiting for him. As he rushed past a small cafe, Thomas noticed something that made him slow down. An older man was sitting quietly on a wooden crate near the cafe door. The man looked to be in his 50s. He had kind blue eyes and hands that looked rough from hard work. His clothes were old and worn, but they were clean and tidy. Next to the man was a small piece of cardboard. Someone had written on it, with careful handwriting, "Please help. Just need £1 for a warm meal." Most people walking by did not even look at the man. They were too busy with their phones or too focused on getting to work. Some people saw him but quickly looked away and walked faster. A few people shook their heads and muttered things like "get a job" under their breath. But something about this man made Thomas stop walking. Maybe it was the way the man said "please" so politely to each person who passed. Maybe it was how he looked people in the eyes with dignity. Even when they ignored him, the man did not seem angry or desperate. He seemed tired but hopeful. "Excuse me, sir," the man said gently to Thomas. His voice was soft and respectful. "Could you spare just £1? I have not eaten anything today." Thomas looked at this man, who was asking for so little. Most homeless people Thomas had seen before asked for more money, or they seemed aggressive or demanding. But this man was different. He asked for just £1. And he asked nicely. Thomas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his expensive leather wallet. It was full of £20 and £50 notes. He could easily give this man £10 or £20 without even noticing the money was gone. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of just giving the man money and walking away, Thomas closed his wallet and sat down on the stone step right beside the man. "What is your story?" Thomas asked. His voice was full of real curiosity, not pity. The man's blue eyes opened wide with surprise. He stared at Thomas like he could not believe what had just happened. "You want to know about me?" the man asked, quietly. Double quotes, "Yes, I do," Thomas said. "What is your name?" "My name is William," the man replied. "And no one has asked me that question in many months." Thomas waited patiently while William gathered his thoughts. Then William began to speak. "I served in the British Army for 20 years. William said. His voice became stronger as he talked about his military service. "I was a sergeant. I led good men and women. I was proud of my work, and I thought I would have a job waiting for me when I came home." William paused and looked down at his worn hands. "But when I left the army, everything was different. I tried to find work, but no one wanted to hire a -1-year-old former soldier. Employers said I was too old, or that my military experience was not useful in civilian jobs." Thomas listened carefully. He could see pain in William's eyes, but also intelligence and honor. "I used up all my savings looking for work," William continued. "Then I lost my fat because I could not pay rent. After that, I lost my confidence. I started to believe what people told me, that I was useless, that I was too old, that no one wanted me. William's voice became very quiet. I have been living on the streets for 8 months now. Most days, I can find enough money for one small meal. Some days, I cannot. Thomas felt something change inside his chest. This was not just a man asking for money. This was someone who had served his country with honor and had fallen on hard times through no fault of his own. William, Thomas said, slowly, I have an idea. William looked at him with hope and fear in his eyes. Instead of giving you £1, Thomas said, I want to give you £100. William's mouth fell open. He could not speak for several seconds. Sir, that is far too generous. I only asked for £1. Wait, Thomas said, holding up his hand. There is a condition. I want you to use this money to help other people who need it. Keep track of how you spend every penny, and meet me here next week to tell me what happened. William stared at Thomas in complete disbelief. You would trust me with that much money? Yes. I do trust you, Thomas said firmly. He pulled out 5 £20 notes and placed them in William's weathered hands. I see something special in you, William. Show me I am right. As Thomas stood up and walked away, William sat holding the money with tears running down his face. For the first time in many months, someone had treated him with respect and trust. William could not sleep that night. He sat on a bench in the small park where he usually spent his nights. The 5 £20 notes were folded carefully in his jacket pocket. He kept touching the pocket to make sure the money was still there. £100 felt like a fortune to William. He had not held that much money in his hands for over a year. His mind kept thinking of all the things he could buy for himself. A warm meal at a real restaurant, new clothes that did not have holes, a night in a cheap hotel with a real bed and a hot shower, maybe even a week in a hostel while he looked for work. But every time William thought about spending the money on himself, he remembered Thomas sitting beside him on the street. He remembered the trust in Thomas's eyes when he handed over the money. Thomas had given him something more valuable than money. Thomas had given him respect and a chance to prove himself. William made a decision. He would not let Thomas down. He would use the money exactly as Thomas had asked. He would help other people, and he would keep careful records of every penny. When the sun came up, William walked to the areas of London where homeless people gathered. He knew these places well because he had been living there for 8 months. Behind the train station, under the bridge near the river, in the doorways of closed shops, these were the places where people like him tried to stay warm and safe. William knew many of the homeless people by name. There was Margaret, a woman in her 60s who slept near the train station with her old dog. Margaret had been a teacher before she lost her job and her home. She was always kind to everyone, even when she was hungry and cold. There was young Jamie, who was only 19 years old. Jamie had run away from home after fighting with his parents. He was scared and did not know how to survive on the streets. The older homeless people tried to help him, but Jamie was too proud to accept much help. There was Peter, an old man who had been living rough for 3 years. Peter had a bad cough that never seemed to get better. He needed medicine, but he could not afford to see a doctor or buy the pills he needed. William walked through all these areas, thinking about how he could help these people with the money Thomas had given him. His first stop was a small corner shop. William bought a notebook and a pen for £2. He would keep careful records of every penny he spent, just like Thomas had asked him to do. William wrote on the first page, "Money from Thomas, £100, notebook and pen, £2, money left." Pound 98. Next, William walked to the bakery where he sometimes asked for day-old bread. The owner was a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Emma. She had always been kind to William, even when he could not pay for anything. "Good morning, Mrs. Emma," William said politely. "How much do you charge for day-old bread?" £2 for a whole bag, Mrs. Emma replied with a smile. She had always been nice to William, never making him feel ashamed for being homeless. "I would like to buy 3 bags, please," William said. Mrs. Emma looked surprised because William had never bought so much bread before. "That is £6, Mrs. Emma said. "Are you having a party?" William smiled. "In a way. Yes, I want to make sandwiches for people who are hungry. Could you help me with something?" "Do you have any cheese or ham that I could buy?" Mrs. Emma's face lit up with understanding and kindness. "Of course I can help. I have some cheese and ham that expires today. The law says I cannot sell it tomorrow, but it is still perfectly good to eat. Take it for free." Mrs. Emma filled 2 bags with sliced cheese and ham. She also gave William some butter and mustard. "This should make many sandwiches," she said warmly. William thanked Mrs. Emma and carried the bags to the small park near the train station. He found a clean bench and spent the next 2 hours making sandwiches. He made them carefully, using plenty of filling so they would be satisfying meals. As William worked, homeless people began to notice what he was doing. Word spread quickly among them that William was giving away food. Soon, a small line formed near his bench. William gave sandwiches to everyone who came. He knew most of them by name. Margaret was first in line with her old dog. "Bless you, William," she said with tears in her eyes. "I have not eaten since yesterday morning." Young Jamie was too shy to ask, but William called him over and gave him 2 sandwiches. "Eat one now and save one for later," William told him gently. By noon, William had given away all the sandwiches. He had fed 12 people a good meal. In his notebook, he wrote, "Bread and filling, £6. Fed 12 people a warm meal after lunch." William walked to the charity shop on the high street. The volunteer was an elderly lady named Rose who had been working there for many years. "Good afternoon, dear," Rose said kindly. "What can I help you find today?" "I need warm socks," William said. "What are your cheapest ones?" 3 pairs for £5, Rose replied. "Are these for you, dear?" "No," William said. "They are for friends who need them more than I do." Rose smiled and helped William choose 15 pairs of thick, warm socks. As William paid, Rose asked, "Are you buying these for other homeless people?" "Yes," William said simply. "Everyone deserves to have warm, dry feet." William spent the afternoon walking through the areas where homeless people stayed. He gave socks to 15 different people. Many of them cried when they received the gift. Having warm, dry feet was something most people took for granted. But for homeless people, it was a luxury. In his notebook, William wrote, "Socks, £25. 15 people now have warm, dry feet." As evening approached, William made one more stop. He went to the pharmacy and bought basic medical supplies. He bought bandages, pain relief tablets, and antiseptic cream. Many people living on the streets had small cuts and bruises that could become infected without proper care. The medicine cost £18. William carefully wrote this in his notebook. Medical supplies, £18, will help treat injuries and prevent infections. By the end of the day, William had spent £49 and helped 28 people. He sat on his usual bench and looked at his notebook. He had £51 left, and he knew exactly how he wanted to use it. But William also knew that his biggest challenge was yet to come, tomorrow. He would try to help people in ways that money alone could not fix. On his second day with Thomas's money, William walked past the public library in the center of town. The library was a place where many homeless people went during the day because it was warm and free. People could sit at tables and pretend to read while they rested. Outside the library, William noticed a young woman sitting on the steps with a small child. The woman looked very tired. Her clothes were clean but wrinkled, like she had slept in them. The little girl beside her was about 3 years old with curly brown hair. She was playing quietly with a toy car that had one wheel missing. William could tell that this woman and child were in trouble, but they were trying hard not to show it. The woman sat up straight and kept her chin high. She did not have a sign asking for money, and she was not asking people for help as they walked by. William approached them carefully. He did not want to frighten them or make them feel ashamed. "Good morning," William said politely. "My name is William. Are you waiting for the library to open?" The young woman looked up at him with suspicious eyes. She pulled her daughter a little closer to her side. "Yes," she said simply. "We like to read here." William could see that she was lying, but he understood why. He sat down on the steps, keeping some distance between them so she would not feel threatened. "I come here often too," William said gently. "It is a good place to spend time when you need somewhere warm and quiet." The woman studied William's face. She could see that he was homeless too. From his old clothes and the tired look in his eyes, slowly, she began to relax. "My name is Lucy," she said quietly. "This is my daughter Grace." "Hello, Grace," William said to the little girl. Grace looked up at him with big brown eyes and smiled shyly. Lucy watched how William spoke to her daughter. His voice was kind and gentle. He did not talk down to Grace like some adults did. Lucy decided she could trust this man. "We are not homeless," Lucy said quickly, though her voice was not very convincing. "We just need a few days to sort things out." William understood this kind of pride. He had said the same thing when he first lost his home 8 months ago. He had told himself and everyone else that his situation was temporary, that he would find work soon, that everything would be fine. "I understand," William said. "Sometimes life gets complicated." Lucy looked down at her hands. "We have been sleeping in our car," she admitted. "We lost our flat 3 weeks ago when I lost my job. The car is old, but it keeps us dry." William's heart went out to this young mother. He could see how hard she was trying to take care of her daughter and keep their dignity. "What do you need most right now?" William asked gently. Lucy was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Grace is supposed to start nursery school next week. I already registered her before we lost the flat, but I need £30 for her uniform and school supplies. I have been looking for work, but no one will hire someone without a permanent address." William looked at little Grace, who was still playing with her broken toy car. She was making quiet car sounds and moving the toy along the step. The sight of her made William's chest hurt. She reminded him of his own daughter Emma, whom he had not seen since his divorce 5 years ago. Emma would be 8 years old now. William wondered if she remembered him, if she missed him, if she was happy. The pain of missing his daughter was one of the hardest parts of being homeless. "I can help with the school money," William said to Lucy, "but I have a better idea." "What kind of work are you looking for?" Lucy's eyes filled with hope. "I was a secretary for 7 years before Grace was born," she said. "I am good with computers and organizing files. I can type fast, and I know how to use spreadsheets and databases." William could hear the pride in Lucy's voice when she talked about her skills. This was a woman who wanted to work, who had valuable abilities, who just needed someone to give her a chance. William took out his notebook and carefully wrote down Lucy's full name, her phone number, and details about her work experience. Then he reached into his pocket and counted out £30. "This is for Grace's school uniform and supplies," William said, handing Lucy the money. "But I think I can help you with something more important than money." Lucy stared at the money in her hands. "I cannot take this," she said. "You look like you need it more than we do." "I am helping you because someone helped me," William explained. "And I have an idea that might get you a real job." That afternoon, William walked across town to a small office building. On the second floor was a cleaning company called Charlie's Cleaners. The owner was William's old friend Charlie Thompson. William and Charlie had known each other for 15 years. When Charlie first started his cleaning business, William had helped him get his first contracts. William had been successful then, with a good job and a nice home. He had introduced Charlie to other business owners who needed cleaning services. But William had not seen Charlie since he became homeless. He was embarrassed about how much his life had changed. William took a deep breath and knocked on Charlie's office door. "Come in," Charlie called out. William opened the door and stepped inside. Charlie looked up from his desk and his face went white with shock. "William," Charlie said, standing up quickly. "Is that really you?" "Hello, Charlie," William said quietly. "I need to ask you for a favor." Charlie stared at his old friend. William looked so different from the confident, well-dressed man Charlie remembered. "William, what has happened to you? You look—" "I have been homeless for 8 months," William said simply. He did not try to make excuses or explain everything that had gone wrong. "But right now, I am not here to talk about me. I am here to talk about someone who needs work." Charlie sat back down, still staring at William with concern and sadness. "I know a woman who needs a job," William continued. "Her name is Lucy. She was a secretary for 7 years. She is honest, skilled, and desperate for a chance. She has a 3-year-old daughter, and they are living in their car." Charlie was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about how William had helped him years ago, when his business was new and struggling. "Send her to me tomorrow morning," Charlie finally said. "If she is half as good as you say she is, she can start work immediately. I need someone to help with my office work and scheduling." William felt a wave of relief and joy wash over him. "Thank you, Charlie. This means everything." "William," Charlie said gently, "what can I do to help you?" "Help Lucy," William replied. "That is all I need right now." William rushed back to the library to find Lucy. She was still sitting on the steps with Grace, who had fallen asleep in her mother's arms. "Lucy," William said, trying to keep his voice calm even though he was excited. "I have news. I found you a job interview." Lucy's eyes went wide. "What do you mean?" "My friend Charlie owns a cleaning company. He needs someone to help in his office. If you go see him tomorrow morning, he will give you a job." Lucy stared at William in disbelief. Then tears began running down her face. She stood up, still holding sleeping Grace, and hugged William tightly. "How can I ever repay you?" Lucy asked through her tears. "Help someone else when you can," William replied. "That is how it works." That evening, William sat on his bench and wrote in his notebook, "Money for Grace's school, £30. Job connection for Lucy, £0. Value priceless." William smiled as he wrote. He was beginning to understand what Thomas had wanted him to learn. 1 week had passed since Thomas gave William the £100. William woke up early on the morning they were supposed to meet again. He had spent 6 days helping people and keeping careful records of every penny spent. Now it was time to report back to Thomas. William sat on the same stone step outside the small cafe where they had first met. He held his notebook tightly in his hands. The notebook was now full of names, stories, and detailed records of how he had used every pound. William felt nervous, but also proud of what he had accomplished. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, William saw Thomas walking down the street. Thomas was wearing another expensive suit and carrying his leather briefcase, but this time, Thomas was not rushing. He walked slowly, looking round as if he was seeing the street for the first time. When Thomas saw William sitting on the step, his face showed relief and curiosity. Thomas had been wondering all week if William would really be there. Part of him worried that William might have taken the money and disappeared, but another part of him believed that William was different from what most people expected. William. Thomas called out as he got closer. "I was not sure you would be here." William stood up with dignity and straightened his old jacket, even though his clothes were still worn and patched. William carried himself like the soldier he used to be. "I gave you my word," William said firmly. "I have something to show you." Thomas sat down on the step beside William, just like he had done a week ago. William opened his notebook to the first page and began to read. Day 1. William began. "I bought a notebook and pen for £2. Then I bought bread and made sandwiches for 12 hungry people. Cost £6. Thomas listened carefully as William read through each day of the week. William had kept perfect records of every penny spent. More importantly, he had written down the name of every person he helped and how the help had changed their situation. Margaret, the woman who sleeps near the train station, now has warm blankets and a raincoat. William read. Jamie, the 19-year-old boy, got a haircut and clean clothes. He has been going to job interviews and looks hopeful again. William turned the page and continued. Peter, the old man with the bad cough, received medicine from the pharmacy. His cough is much better now, and he can sleep at night. As William read, Thomas began to understand that something amazing had happened. William had not just given people money or things they needed. He had given them something much more valuable. "I spent £97 in total," William reported. When he finished reading, "I have £3 left, and I kept all the receipts." William pulled out a small envelope full of receipts and handed it to Thomas. But Thomas was not interested in looking at the receipts. He was much more interested in the stories William had told him. "Tell me more about Lucy," Thomas said. "The woman with the little daughter." William's face lit up. "Lucy started working for my friend Charlie 3 days ago. She is excellent at her job. Charlie says she is the best office helper he has ever had. Yesterday, Lucy found a small flat that she can afford with her new salary. She and Grace moved out of their car." "And Grace?" Thomas asked. "Grace started nursery school yesterday," William said with a big smile. "Lucy says Grace loves it. She is learning to read and making friends with other children." Thomas shook his head in amazement. "What about David?" "You mentioned a teenager. David was living under the bridge," William explained. "He is only 17 years old. He ran away from home after fighting with his parents. I talked to him for hours. I convinced him to call his mother and father. It turned out they had been looking for him everywhere. They were so worried. David went home 2 days ago." Thomas stared at William with wonder. "You did not just give them money," Thomas said slowly. "You gave them hope." William nodded. when you trusted me with this task. You reminded me who I used to be for 8 months. I felt like I was nothing. I felt like I had no value, no purpose. But this week, I remembered what Thomas asked gently. I was a sergeant in the army for 20 years. William said with pride returning to his voice, I led good men and women. I solved problems. That seemed impossible. I took care of people who were counting on me. When I became homeless, I forgot that person existed. William looked down at his notebook, which was full of the names of people whose lives had been changed. But helping these people reminded me that I still have skills. I can still lead. I can still solve problems. I can still take care of people who need help. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about everything William had told him. Then Thomas made a decision that surprised both of them. William, Thomas said carefully, I want to offer you something. This is not charity. This is a job offer. William's eyes went wide with shock. A job. I have been thinking about starting a new program, Thomas explained. A program to help people who are struggling with homelessness, unemployment, and other challenges. I need someone to run this program. Someone who understands what these people are going through. Someone who has the heart to help and the skills to lead. William could not speak for several seconds. His eyes filled with tears. You are offering me work, William finally whispered. I am offering you a chance to keep doing what you did this week, Thomas said, but with more resources and support. You would have an office, a budget, and a team of people to help you. You could help hundreds of people instead of just dozens. William looked down at his notebook. It was filled with the names of 43 people whose lives had been touched by one simple act of trust. Margaret with her warm blankets, Jamie with his new confidence, Lucy with her job and home, Grace starting school, David reunited with his family, Peter sleeping peacefully without his cough. Would you consider it? Thomas asked. William looked up at Thomas with tears of joy running down his face. Yes, William said quietly. I would be honored. 6 months had passed since the rainy morning when Thomas first sat down beside William on the street. Now William stood in front of a beautiful new building in the heart of London. The building was 3 stories tall with large windows and a bright red door. Above the entrance was a sign painted in gold letters that read, Second Chances Community Centre. William looked very different from the homeless man who had asked for £1 6 months ago. He wore a clean navy blue suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was cut short and neat, and he carried a black leather briefcase. But his eyes still held the same kindness and dignity they had shown on that first day. Thomas stood beside William on the sidewalk, watching as dozens of people walked through the red door of the community centre. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and the centre was opening for another busy day of helping people who needed support. Look at all these people, Thomas said with amazement in his voice. Look what grew from £100. William smiled and shook his head gently. No, Thomas, he said. Look what grew from trust. Through the large windows, they could see inside the busy centre, in the main office. Lucy sat at a desk helping a young woman fill out job application forms. Lucy now worked as the centre's office manager. She had been promoted twice in 6 months because she was so good at her job. Lucy wore professional clothes and had a confident smile as she explained how the centre could help the woman find work and housing. In the kitchen, Margaret was preparing lunch for the people who would visit the centre that day. Margaret now lived in a small but comfortable flat that she could afford with her part-time job at the centre. She volunteered in the kitchen every morning because she remembered what it felt like to be hungry, and wanted to make sure no one else had to feel that way. Near the children's area, Grace was playing with building blocks with 3 other children. Grace was now 4 years old and had grown taller and stronger. She attended a good nursery school in the mornings and came to the center's daycare in the afternoons while her mother worked. Grace was happy and secure, surrounded by people who cared about her. At a desk in the corner, a young man named Jamie was talking on the telephone. Jamie was now 20 years old and had just finished his first year at college. He was studying business and social work. During his school holidays, Jamie came back to volunteer at the center, helping other young people who were struggling with homelessness or family problems. The center now helps over 200 people each month. William told Thomas as they walked through the front door, "We provide job training, temporary housing, counseling, and most importantly, hope." The inside of the center was warm and welcoming. The walls were painted in cheerful colors, and there were comfortable chairs and sofas where people could sit and talk. One wall had a large bulletin board covered with thank you letters, job announcements, and photos of people who had been helped by the center. William had become the program director of the center. He had an office on the second floor where he met with people who needed help and planned new programs. William's military experience had taught him how to organize and lead people, and his time on the streets had taught him how to understand and connect with people who were struggling. The success of the Second Chances Community Centre had inspired other businesses in London to create similar programs. A reporter from the local newspaper had written a long article about William's story, calling it "The Pound That Changed Everything." The article had been shared thousands of times on social media, and people from all over the country had contacted the center asking for advice on how to start their own programs. Thomas walked with William through the different areas of the center. In one room, a group of people were learning computer skills that would help them find jobs. In another room, a counselor was talking with a family about how to find affordable housing. In the basement, there were beds and lockers for people who needed a safe place to sleep while they got back on their feet. "Do you ever regret not just taking that money for yourself that first day?" Thomas asked William as they stood in the main hall of the center. William smiled and pointed to Grace, who was now laughing as she played with the other children in the daycare area. Then he pointed to David, the teenager who had run away from home 6 months ago. David was now 18 and studying at university to become a social worker. He wanted to help other young people who were having problems with their families. William pointed to dozens of other people who were in the center. That day, there was Peter, the old man who had suffered from a terrible cough. Peter now had his own small flat and worked part-time, a maintenance helper at the center. There was a woman named Sarah who had lost her job and home, but had found both again with help from the center's programs. There was a man named Robert who had struggled with depression, but had found hope and friendship at the center. "How could I regret this?" William said to Thomas. "That day you sat down beside me on the street. You did not just give me money. You gave me back my purpose in life." As the afternoon sun began to set over London, William and Thomas stood at the window watching their community of helpers and healers work together. The center was full of people who had once been hopeless, but had found new chances to build better lives. Some were receiving help, and others were giving help to people who needed it even more than they did. The homeless veteran who had once asked for just £1 had become the leader of a movement that proves something beautiful and important. When people treat each other with dignity and trust, amazing things can happen. When people believe in each other and give each other chances to prove their worth, lives can be completely transformed. On the wall near the entrance of the center, painted in bright blue letters, was the center's motto that explained everything. Everyone deserves a second chance. The end.